Episodes are Wild West Rescue, Tricky Transport Day, Thunderstorm, Pink Slippers, Perfect Pizza, and Playful Pets. Episodes are Postman Pat and the Greendale Rockets and Postman Pat's Magic Christmas. Episodes are Postman Pat Clouds Around, Postman Pat and the Runaway Kite, and Postman Pat and the Job Well Done. Episodes are Postman Pat and the Ice Cream Machine, Postman Pat and the Great Green Dell Race, Postman Pat and the Hungry Goats, and Postman Pat and the Jumble Sale. Episodes are Postman Pat's Pirate Treasure, Postman Pat and the Green Rabbit, and Postman Pat and the Flying Saucers. Episodes are Postman Pat and the Great Dinosaur Hunt, Postman Pat's Big Butterflies, Postman Pat's Spotty Situation, Postman Pat and the Greendale Movie. Episodes are Postman Pat and the Giant Snowball, Postman Pat and the Ice Slider, Postman Pat and the Spooky Sleepover, and Postman Pat and the Train Inspector. Episodes are Postman Pat Goes Football Crazy and Postman Pat and the Troublesome Train. Episodes are Postman Pat's Pop Stars, Postman Pat at the Seaside, Postman Pat and the Job Swap Day, and Postman Pat and the Disappearing Dottie. Episodes are Postman Pat's Great Big Party, Postman Pat the Magician, Postman Pat and the Surprise Present, Postman Pat and the Flying Post, and Postman Pat Potluck Picnic. Episodes are Postman Pat's Go-Kart Race, Postman Pat and the Grumpy Donkey, Postman Pat and the Croaky Cows, and Postman Pat and the Greendale Knights, which is the last DVD to feature the Macrovision, in case you're wondering. Episodes are Postman Pat's Fun Run, Postman Pat and the Stolen Strawberries, and a bonus Jim, Jam and Sunny Sun. Episodes are Postman Pat's Christmas Eve, Postman Pat Goes Undercover, Postman Pat's Ice Capade, Postman Pat and the Clifftop Adventure, Postman Pat's Pet Rescue. Episodes are Postman Pat's Big Boat Adventure, Postman Pat and the Spy Mission, Postman Pat and the Talking Cat, Postman Pat and the Secret Superhero, and Postman Pat Gets Stuck.